Christmas did not begin in power, wealth, or empire. It began in poverty, silence, and love. In this special Season 1 episode, we explore Christmas through a pure Catholic spiritual lens, how the Incarnation restored dignity to the poor, offered hope to the forgotten, and transformed the meaning of suffering forever. From the manger to the margins of society, this episode reflects on how Christianity gave hope where empires could not, and why Christmas remains a light in the darkness for millions. There are moments in human history when time itself seems to bend. Before Christ, power flowed downward, kings ruled, the poor endured, the weak were expendable. Christmas reversed the direction. God chose the margins, God chose the poor, God chose a teenage mother, God chose a laborer's home. This terrified system's built on hierarchy. Because if God identifies with the least, then the least are no longer invisible. That is why Herod trembled. That is why the innocent were killed. That is why darkness reacted violently. Light exposes what power wants hidden. Christmas did not come without warning. The prophets spoke for centuries. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2. A virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. From Bethlehem shall come forth one who is to be ruler in Israel. Micah chapter 5, verse 2. Humanity was aching. The world knew something was wrong. Wars continued. The poor remained crushed. Death still ruled. Christmas answered a question humanity didn't know how to ask. What if God himself stepped into the wound? Why Christmas belongs to the poor. Christmas is not sentimental. It is revolutionary compassion. Christ was born without wealth so that wealth would never define worth. He was laid in a feeding trough so no human would ever be beneath God's gaze. For the poor, Christmas is not a metaphor. Yitzhaken suyopen tru, naten ston, an masten saten, chaten stit, yoberdaken stitten, izazitten stakens, idaften is a promise. A promise that suffering is seen, a promise that dignity is God-given, a promise that no one is forgotten. This is why Christianity spread among slaves, laborers, widows, and the broken, not because it promised comfort, but because it promised presence, God with us, Emmanuel. Love that costs something. Christmas teaches humanity what love really is. Not desire, not convenience, not emotion alone, but sacrifice. Mary risks her reputation. Joseph risks his future. God risks rejection. Love in Christianity always costs something, and that is why Christmas transforms hearts, because it shows a love willing to suffer rather than dominate, a love willing to descend rather than demand ascent, a love willing to die, eventually, for those who did not earn it. Even now, Christmas unsettles the world, because, it refuses despair. It insists that meaning exists beyond material success. It declares that the soul matters. It confronts cultures that measure humans by productivity, wealth, or usefulness. Christmas says you matter because you exist. You are loved because God chose to be with you. You are not alone. And that truth dismantles fear-based control. Why does Christmas soften people? Why do enemies pause? Why do strangers give? Why does generosity surge? Because deep within humanity is a memory that we were made for love, a memory that light belongs to us, a memory that the world was meant to be kinder. Christmas awakens that memory, even in those who doubt. Christianity never promised an easy world, it promised a redeemed one. Christmas does not erase pain, it gives pain meaning. If God entered suffering, then suffering is not the end. If God became weak, then weakness is not failure. If God was born into darkness, then darkness is not final. This is why Christmas survives war, famine, and loss, because it does not deny reality, it transforms it. Christmas tells humanity something radical. You are worth dying for. You are worth entering time for. You are worth loving without condition. That message outlived empires, outlived persecution, outlived attempts to erase it, because it speaks to something eternal in the human soul. The Gospel of John says it best. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Christmas is that light. quiet, persistent, unstoppable. It does not shout, it does not force, it simply is, and as long as humanity longs for love, justice, mercy, and hope, Christmas will endure. In a broken world, Christmas does not offer escape, it offers incarnation. God did not save humanity from a distance, He came close, and in doing so, He reminded us who we are, children of hope, bearers of light, loved beyond measure. There was a time when, winter didn't just mean inconvenience, it meant death. Before electricity, before stored abundance, before global supply chains, winter was an existential threat. Crops failed, animals vanished, the sun weakened, entire civilizations, honestly, lived at the mercy of daylight. This is where our story begins, not with Rome, not with Christianity, but with a question older than writing itself. What happens if the sun does not return? Every ancient culture watched the sky obsessively in winter. Stone circles, temple alignments, shadow markers, astronomical tablets, all of them track the same moment, the winter solstice, when the sun stops retreating, and when it moves again. This moment, this fragile return of light, is the buried foundation beneath Saturnalia, and beneath Christmas. In ancient cosmology, the universe was not governed by laws, it was governed by agreements. If humans honored the gods maintained order. If ritual failed, famine followed. The Romans inherited this worldview from earlier Mediterranean cultures, Etruscans, Greeks, and Near Eastern civilizations, older still. Winter was the ultimate test of that contract. Saturn, the god later honored during Saturnalia, was not originally a party god, he was a time god. His name is linguistically linked to sowing, cycles, the binding and unbinding of order. Roman sources like Varro and Macrobius describe Saturn as ruler of a forgotten age, a time before hierarchy. This golden age was not history, it was memory myth, a way of saying things were once balanced and could be again. Saturnalia was designed to reopen that balance brief for Stau. Britur Bonfries. The Circenses and now, most dangerous time of the year. Saturnalia began on December 17th. By the late Republic, it stretched for days. What happened during Saturnalia shocked outsiders. Slaves were allowed to speak freely, dine with masters, and even mock authority. Masters served meals. Gambling was legal. Work stopped. This was not indulgence, it was ritual inversion. Ancient archives show this pattern across civilizations. Egypt's Feast of Drunkenness, Mesopotamian New Year reversals, Babylonian mock kings. Why? Because rigid systems eventually collapse unless pressure is released. Saturnalia prevented rebellion by performing it safely, but here is the key insight rarely discussed. Saturnalia was not about chaos, it was about remembering a world without fear. Today you over Trino. During the darkest time of the year, the laughter was armor. Roman writers, they repeatedly mention candles during Saturnalia. Small, cheap gifts, figurines, lamps, wax lights. These were not toys, they were symbols of survival. Light meant the sun had not died, order still held, the contract remained intact. By the late Empire, this symbolism merged with Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Inscriptions confirm December 25th as its festival. Coins show solar rays behind emperors' heads. The message was clear. Rome ruled because the sun favored it, but symbols can be stolen or, transformed. Early Christianity did not celebrate December, it avoided it. Church fathers like Tertullian and Origen rejected pagan festivals explicitly. Birthdays were viewed as pagan, astrological, imperial. Christ mattered, but honestly, his birth did not, until Christianity inherited an empire. Once Christianity became public power, it faced a brutal reality. You cannot erase winter rituals, you can only reframe them. This is where strategy enters theology. December 25th appears quietly, no declaration, no proclamation, just usage. Church calendars begin to mark it, sermons reinterpret solar language, Christ becomes the true light, the rising sun, the unconquered one. Saturnalia fades, but the season survives, because really, humans do not abandon rituals that help them endure darkness. They rename them. Saturnalia did not die, it went underground. And in the next episode we follow that hidden current, through solstice temples, forbidden rites, and the quiet absorption of ancient power into Christian time itself. There is a symbol older than Rome, older than Christianity, older than writing itself. It rises every morning, it disappears every night, and once a year, it almost seems to fail. The sun, Sonder Aikwan. The sun. Empires have fallen trying to control land, but none have ever controlled the sun. Now we must descend underground, literally. Across the Roman world, archaeologists have uncovered Mithraea, small cave-like temples used by followers of Mithras, a mystery cult especially popular among soldiers. Mithras was associated with, well, light, oaths, and cosmic order. The sun. Reliefs depict Mithras slaying a bull, not as violence, but as cosmic renewal. Blood becomes life. Death feeds rebirth. Mithraic iconography is saturated with astronomy, zodiac symbols, Sol and Luna figures, and celestial ladders. Some Mithraic inscriptions associate Mithras closely with Sol, sometimes as companion, sometimes as embodiment. Important clarification. Mithraism was not Christianity before Christianity. It had no nativity story, no resurrection doctrine, no universal salvation, but it trained Romans to think in solar theology. It prepared the cultural ground. Early Christianity emerged in a world already saturated with solar meaning. This created tension. On one hand, Christians rejected sun worship explicitly. Church fathers condemned it as idolatry. On the other hand, Christian scripture itself is filled with light imagery. Christ is called the light of the world, the morning star, the sun of righteousness. As in Malachi, this language was Jewish in origin, metaphorical, moral, but in a Roman context, it resonated cosmically. Christians didn't invent solar symbolism. They inherited a world where it already ruled. And when Christianity moved from persecuted sect to imperial faith, it faced a choice: reject the sun, or redefine it. By the 4th century, Christian art begins to shift. Christ appears crowned, radiant, sometimes haloed with solar rays. This was not pagan relapse, it was visual translation. The halo itself originates in Greco-Roman solar imagery. It symbolized divine authority, not sun worship. Church leaders like Augustine explicitly addressed this confusion. They warned believers, do not worship the sun, worship the creator of the sun. But they also allowed solar language to remain, carefully reframed. Christ was not the sun. He was greater. The true light behind all light. Now we return to the date. December 25th was already loaded with meaning. Sol Invictus, imperial renewal, cosmic victory. Christianity did not steal this date. It neutralized it. By placing Christ's birth here, the Church made a bold claim. The true unconquered light was not celestial, it was incarnate. The sun rises every year, but Christ enters history once. What went underground? Sol Invictus declined, its temples closed, its priests faded, its festivals lost imperial backing, but solar instinct never vanished. It passed through art, through language, through season, and it remains, quietly, every December. Why early Christians resisted Christmas itself. And ein how am Saj. With no date became the most powerful date in the Western calendar. There is a comforting myth about conversion, that one day people abandon their old gods, and the next day, they accept new ones. History does not work that way. Empires do not convert by erasing memory, they convert by redirecting it. And by the 4th century, Christianity faced a truth it could no longer ignore. You cannot convert a civilization without first converting its calendar. Part 1. Time as Power. Ancient people did not experience time abstractly. Time was. So, the Roman calendar was, seasonal, ritual, public, and enforced. It really governed when people worked, when they rested, when they sacrificed, and when they celebrated. Whoever controlled the calendar, honestly, controlled labor, emotion, expectation, and even memory. When Christianity became the imperial faith, it actually inherited a machine built for paganism. Destroying it would cause chaos, but using it would bring continuity. In the end, the church chose continuity. So, let's move into part 2. Absorption, not erasure. Christian leaders honestly, they weren't naive. They realized that people still decorated their homes, exchanged gifts, lit candles and, gathered together in December. They also knew that prohibition, it just didn't work. So, instead of banning people's behavior, they decided to reinterpret its meaning. This strategy, by the way, shows up again and again in church letters and sermons. Keep the practice, change the story, and redirect people's devotion. This, right here, is absorption, and honestly, it was a deliberate choice. So, let's consider greenery for a moment. Evergreens actually appear in Roman winter festivals, Germanic Yule, and Celtic rites. They symbolized quite a lot, really. Life during death, continuity during decay, and hope in darkness, these are the meanings evergreens carried. Christianity did not reject this, not at all. Instead, evergreen imagery was reframed to represent eternal life, resurrection, and, God's unending presence. The plant stayed, the meaning evolved. This pattern repeats everywhere. Part 4. Light, fire, and memory. Candles were everywhere in ancient winter rites. They were not decoration, they were survival symbols. So, Christianity absorbed candle rituals seamlessly because, light already symbolized divine truth, while darkness was already seen as a symbol of ignorance. No contradiction was needed here. The ritual was reinterpreted, not replaced. And honestly, this is why Christmas feels so ancient, because, parts of it truly are. Part 5. Feasts, gifts, and controlled excess. Saturnalia, for instance, allowed excess, but only temporarily. Christianity distrusted excess, but it understood release, so it moralized it. Feasting became fellowship, gift-giving became charity, joy became gratitude. The behavior continued, but it was now supervised. Absorption creates order. Not everything survived. Mock kings vanished, public disorder faded, ritual rebellion was suppressed. Why? Because Christianity offered a different solution, internal discipline instead of ritual chaos, and, moral hierarchy instead of social inversion. What survived were rituals that reinforced stability. Christianity did not conquer winter by force, it inherited it. Saturnalia ended, Sol Invictus faded, but honestly, the season endured. And, we ask the most unsettling question of all, what still survives today, unnoticed, unexamined, and still shaping? There is something strange about Christmas. For a holiday so central to Christianity, its origin is silent. No gospel gives a date for Jesus' birth. No apostle mentions celebrating it. No early church calendar records it. For centuries, Christianity existed without Christmas. This is not speculation. It is documented fact. And the question is not why December 25th was chosen. The deeper question is, why was the birth avoided at all? In the ancient world, birthdays were not innocent. They were associated with astrology, fate, and imperial cults. Pagan rulers, Roman emperors, celebrated their birthdays as cosmic events, moments when divine favor entered the world. Early Christians rejected this entire framework. Church writers like Origen of Alexandria explicitly criticized birthday celebrations, noting that in Scripture, only sinners celebrate their births. This wasn't moral disdain, it was theological resistance. Christianity focused on conversion, martyrdom, resurrection, and judgment. Birth was merely the beginning of suffering. Death was the gateway to salvation. So the idea of celebrating Christ's birth felt, to early Christians, not just unnecessary, but theologically misplaced. Here is where the tension deepens. The idea that God became flesh was not universally accepted, even among Christians. Early Christianity was fragmented. Gnostics rejected physical incarnation, Docetists claimed Christ only appeared human, and adoptionists believed Jesus became divine later. Celebrating a birth implied something radical, that flesh mattered, that history mattered, that time mattered. For many early believers, this was dangerous ground. Focusing on the birth risked reducing divinity to biology, encouraging pagan parallels, and anchoring eternity to a calendar. So the church avoided it, not out of ignorance, but caution. When Christians did begin debating Christ's birth, they did not agree. Ancient sources record multiple proposed dates: March, April, May, November, and January. Some Eastern Christians favored January 6th, a date later associated with Epiphany. Others tied Christ's conception to the same date as his crucifixion, based on the ancient belief that prophets died on the same day they were conceived. This places conception on March 25th and birth on December 25th. This calculation was symbolic, not historical. It linked creation, incarnation, and redemption. Time folded inward, meaning over-measurement. Debates are tolerable in small communities. They are dangerous in empires. By the 4th century, Christianity was no longer a persecuted sect. It was becoming imperial infrastructure. Uniformity mattered. Calendars mattered. Festivals mattered. The church needed shared time, shared ritual, shared rhythm. December was already crowded with meaning. Sol Invictus, Saturnalia's echo, public expectation. To ignore it was to surrender the season. To confront it directly risked rebellion. So, the church made a choice, not to invent Christmas, but to anchor meaning in time. The earliest references to December 25th appear quietly. No grand declaration, no theological manifesto, just listings, sermons, calendars. Church leaders preached against sun worship on Christmas Day, which tells us something critical: people were still confusing the two. Augustine scolded Christians for greeting the rising sun on December 25th, not because they were pagans, but because habits linger. Christmas did not arrive as a clean break, it arrived as overlapping memory. Here is where modern narratives often go wrong. Christmas was not created to deceive. It was created to discipline time, to teach people how to reinterpret the season without erasing it. Pagan festivals faded because they lost state support. Their theology no longer aligned with power. Their meaning was absorbed, not stolen. Christianity did not destroy December. It baptized it. Christmas became powerful because it was resisted, because it was debated, because it was delayed, because it was dangerous. The birth of Christ was not easy to celebrate. It forced the church to confront time, flesh, history, power. How the church learned to convert seasons instead of people. And why that strategy changed the world. There is a moment in December that almost everyone recognizes. It happens quietly. The lights are on, the air is cold, time feels different. For a brief stretch, the world seems to pause. This feeling exists even for those who are not religious, do not believe in Saturn, do not attend church, and do not know the history. Let's examine what remains, stripped of theology: light, candles, lights, fires, ancient meaning. The sun lives, order holds, chaos retreats. Modern meaning: warmth, safety, togetherness. The symbol works because it always worked. Evergreen, plants that do not die. Ancient meaning: life survives death. Nature is not defeated. Modern meaning: continuity, tradition, permanence. Same message, new language, gift-giving, small objects exchanged. Ancient meaning: mutual obligation, social bonding, survival through reciprocity. Modern meaning: love, gratitude, belonging. Again, continuity, not invention. Many people sense contradiction in Christmas: sacred and commercial, joyful and melancholic, peaceful and stressful. This is not failure, it is layering. Christmas is not one ritual, it is a stack of rituals accumulated over centuries. Pagan survival rites, Roman social release, Christian incarnation theology, medieval charity customs, modern consumer systems. Each layer speaks to a different human need. That tension is not accidental, it is historical memory colliding in real time. Here is the quiet truth uncovered by archaeology, history, and psychology alike. Humans do not abandon rituals that help them survive darkness. They reinterpret them, rename them, reframe them, but they do not let them go. Saturnalia failed as a religion, but it succeeded as a template. Christmas succeeded not because it erased the past, but because it absorbed it without breaking it. This is not deception, it is adaptation. Every December, humanity reenacts the same ancient story. The light weakens, the world grows cold, fear rises, community responds, and then, slowly, the light returns. Different names, different gods, different meanings, same season, same instinct, same ritual. Saturnalia is gone. Sol Invictus is silent, empires are dust, but the season remains, because long before belief, there was survival, and long after belief fades, there will still be light in the darkness.